At 45, most people don't choose chaos. They choose quiet. They choose comfort. They choose to protect their name, their reputation, the life they've carefully built. They choose silence. So when Jessica Mulroney finally spoke, it wasn't because she wanted attention or applause. It was because silence had become heavier than the truth, and carrying it any longer was starting to feel like a lie. What you're about to hear is not a polished interview moment or a rehearsed soundbite. It's something that, until now, had only lived behind closed doors inside rooms where cameras were never allowed and words were never meant to travel further than the walls that heard them for years. Jessica watched Meghan Markle's story harden into something permanent. She watched interviews replay endlessly. She watched one version of events become accepted as fact while another version, messier and far less flattering, stayed buried. And she stayed quiet. Not because she didn't know better, but because she believed loyalty meant endurance. She had been there, not hovering on the sidelines, but inside the room. She heard what wasn't meant for public ears. She saw what the cameras never captured. She absorbed it, carried it, justified it. But time changes things. And when someone who waited this long finally decides to speak, they're not chasing noise. They're releasing weight. According to Jessica, the cracks didn't start with stress or pressure or culture shock. They started with contempt. Quiet, confident, almost casual contempt. Meghan, she says, mocked the Queen. Not once, not twice. Enough times that it became familiar. One comment, delivered without anger or fear, stayed with her the most. The Queen's just a little old lady in a hat. Why should I bow to her? No laughter? No irony? Just dismissal. And that's what made it chilling. Because this wasn't about one woman. This was about what the Queen represented. Nearly a century of duty, continuity, tradition, the foundation of the institution Meghan had married into. Mocking. That wasn't rebellion. It wasn't humor. It was something colder. It was contempt. Jessica described it as an attitude, not a moment. The curtsy wasn't respect, it was theater. The traditions weren't meaningful, they were outdated. The role wasn't honored, it was tolerated. This wasn't a woman struggling to adapt. This was a woman evaluating whether the monarchy deserved her. That realization, once it landed, couldn't be undone. And it didn't stop with the Queen. According to Jessica, no senior royal was spared. Prince William became material. His posture, his formality, his seriousness. She allegedly mimicked the way he stood, hands clasped, voice measured, turning the future king into a character meant for laughter rather than respect. Kate came next, publicly praised, privately reduced, described as stiff, over-rehearsed, desperate to please. Even that famous smile, admired around the world, was mocked as artificial, something practiced rather than felt. Then there was Charles. His speeches, his gestures, his hands, all reportedly became fodder for private impressions. Jokes delivered with the ease of someone who believed there would never be consequences. But the moment that stunned Jessica most wasn't about power or glamour. It was about Princess Anne. Decades of service, no scandals, no theatrics. According to Jessica, Meghan dismissed her as irrelevant, invisible, a non-factor. That wasn't humor, that was worldview. In Meghan's private hierarchy, relevance mattered more than duty. Visibility mattered more than service. If you didn't command attention, you didn't command respect. And that's when it became clear, this wasn't a clash of personality. It was a clash of values. The monarchy is built on endurance. Meghan, according to Jessica, was built on impact. Those two things were never going to coexist peacefully. There's always a moment when control slips. For Jessica, it came at a dinner party. Not a palace event, not a public function, just a private table. Trusted faces, no cameras, no consequences, or so it seemed. The conversation flowed easily at first. Food, wine, stories about royal life. Meghan was relaxed, confident, in control. Then someone mentioned the Queen. And Meghan didn't hesitate. If it weren't for me, they'd still be stuck in the past. I'm the only interesting thing that's happened to that family in decades. That wasn't mockery anymore, that was declaration. Jessica remembered the silence that followed. The way laughter died mid-breath, the way faces changed, the way Harry looked down at his glass instead of at his wife. In that moment, something irreversible happened. Mockery became belief. Belief became entitlement. And entitlement doesn't coexist with loyalty. Hours later, Meghan would smile for cameras again, polished and gracious. But Jessica says she never saw that smile the same way again. Because once you hear someone speak like that, not joking, not venting, but claiming dominance, you can't unhear it. That dinner party wasn't the beginning of the end. It was confirmation. There's a point in every relationship where reactions matter more than words. According to those who witnessed these moments, Harry didn't always laugh. Sometimes he did. Sometimes he didn't, but one thing stayed consistent. He didn't stop it. At dinners, in private conversations, when lines were crossed, Harry often went quiet. And silence in those moments isn't neutral. Silence is permission. It's what happens when loyalty pulls in two directions and neither side wins. He was raised to revere his grandmother, to understand duty as inheritance, not performance. But he was also a husband. And in those rooms, the balance of power was clear. Meghan spoke. Others adjusted. Jessica recalled moments when Harry's jaw tightened, when he stared into his glass, when he seemed trapped between the woman he married and the family he came from. That tension didn't disappear, it settled, it grew. What looked like unity in public began to feel like separation in private. Not loud, not dramatic, just quietly irreversible. For years, Jessica told herself loyalty meant protection. She defended Meghan when doubts surfaced. She stayed silent when stories didn't align. She convinced herself that what happened behind closed doors wasn't hers to share, until it was. According to Jessica, the breaking point came when Meghan asked for more than friendship, more than discretion. She asked for cover, not emotional support, narrative protection, something that would have required Jessica to risk her own credibility, her career, her name, all to preserve Meghan's image. She never detailed the request fully, but the implication was clear. This wasn't loyalty anymore. This was complicity, and when Jessica refused, everything changed. The friendship didn't fade. It vanished. Messages stopped. Access disappeared. Years of trust erased overnight. That's when silence stopped feeling noble and started feeling dangerous. Because loyalty that demands self-destruction isn't loyalty. It's leverage. That realization didn't make Jessica angry. It made her honest. When history looks back on this chapter, it may not focus on interviews or headlines. It may focus on something much quieter. The moment respect disappeared. Because the crown was never just a symbol. It was a contract. Duty exchanged for privilege. A system built on the idea that no one person is bigger than the institution. But in private rooms, according to those who listened closely, Meghan never saw herself as a supporting figure. She saw herself as the center. And once someone believes that, everything else becomes negotiable. The marriage, the institution, the relationships. Useful while they serve a purpose. Restrictive once they don't. Subject to reassessment the moment leverage shifts. None of this feels sudden anymore. The mockery, the silence, the fractured loyalties. They weren't accidents. They were steps. And that's why this story doesn't really end here. Because when someone views institutions as temporary and relationships as strategic, there is always another move being calculated long before the final smile fades. The countdown doesn't begin when the door closes. It begins the moment someone decides the door never mattered at all.